shadows, an outsider in a small town mystery, friendship, and excellent time management skills. This is me kinda poorly describing some of the things that happen in Persona 4 Golden, a game that is shortly coming out on all platforms, and a game that I first experienced just under 10 years ago. So, should you play Persona 4 Golden in the year 2023? Well, yes, but keep watching the video. Also, call to action, all the things you mentioned at the start of the video. Future me will edit all of them. Now, wasn't that great? On with the video. So what is Persona 4 Golden? In short summary, it's a JRPG with turn-based combat and dungeon crawling. Also, you collect monsters. Also, outside of the dungeon crawling, it's a time management simulator by way of a visual novel. These elements fuse and synergize together, bettering both parts of the game. I'll explain in more detail later. But I bet you're wondering, why are you talking about the fourth game in a franchise? Well, the short answer is, each game is standalone, like the numbered Final Fantasy games, with some recurring elements and references linking them together. But I'll give you some context in a segment I like to call a brief history of Persona and the Shin Megami Tensei franchise. So let's work backwards from Persona 4 Golden, which released in 2013 in Europe on the PlayStation Vita, which is an expanded version of the original PS2 version, which the full title was called Shin Megami Tensei Persona 4, because Persona is one of the many spin-offs of the Shin Megami Tensei franchise, which was originally based on a series of books called Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei. So why am I talking about Persona 4 Golden and not the original Persona 4? Or at least the latest Persona game, Persona 5? Well, mostly timing, as I mentioned earlier. Persona 4 is about to release on all modern consoles, shortly before this video goes out. Also, Persona 4 is the first Persona game I played, and so holds some sentimental value to me. It's about 10 years since Persona 4 Golden was released in Europe, so it's about 10 years since I first played it. Why Persona 4 Golden over the original? Well, Persona 4 Golden has more content, and it's the version that is available on all modern platforms. The version I'm playing, and you'll be seeing footage of, is the Steam version released a few years ago in 2020. It's the best version of the game that's currently out. So at the top of the video I said Persona 4 is a JRPG, which means it's a Japanese role-playing game. The combat takes place in randomly generated dungeons with different floors, but there are some fixed points in the dungeons. Combat is of the turn-based variety that you see in many JRPGs. You can have a party of up to 4 party members at a time, and all control individual personas that give them special abilities. The main character has the ability to switch and acquire new personas in the game. Personas also have weaknesses that can be exploited for more damage and to down enemies. You can also do an all-out attack when all enemies are downed for massive damage. That's the basics of combat. As for the social aspects of the game, there are lots of similarities to other games, but Persona has a mix of different ideas to make it unique. But the quick summary is Persona uses a calendar system for the social side of the game. There are only 1 or 2 things you can do on any day on the calendar. For example, on any given day, you might choose to spend your free time going into a dungeon, hanging out with friends, or improving your social skills. These social elements of the game feed back into the dungeon aspects of the game. As an example, hanging out with a party member makes them stronger in combat. These are the aspects of the game that makes Persona stand out. Having social aspects in RPG is nothing new. If you think of a game like Mass Effect, you can hang out and interact with your party members in between missions. There's also a game like Fire Emblem, where when you position your troops together more often, means they get stronger, but also gives them support links outside of combat. Fire Emblem Three Houses even added their own calendar system into the game. But I think the best way for you to truly grasp the game and how its mechanics synergize together is to go through the game. Well, with the first 3 dungeons of the game. Well, an abridged look at that. So spoilers, I guess. You can use the various timestamps to skip to where you want to skip to. So let's start at the beginning.
Welcome to the Velvet Room.
So when you actually start the game, you'll get an animated intro into the Velvet Room. We meet a bizarre looking man who quickly identifies himself as Igor. He talks about dreams, fate, and contracts. This is where we get to pick our name. The canon name for the P4 protagonist is Yun Naragami, but we're going with Barry Butts, with a Z. Igor talks about tarot cards and some other things. Igor introduces Margaret.
My name is Margaret. I am here to accompany you through your journey.
We see some ads and some other TV bits. We then see Barry on a train. Turns out Barry is a transfer student from the big city moving to Inaba. We are met at the train station by a middle-aged man and his daughter, Dojima and Nanako, who are Butts' uncle and cousin. This is who Butts will be living with in Inaba. We also meet this friendly looking girl. On the way home they stop for gas. Barry meets an attendant. Barry isn't feeling well and then quickly goes home. Dojima has to leave because he's a detective and has to do detective things. On the news, some councilman is having an affair. Then Nanako sings a little commercial jingle.
Every day's great at your Juness. Every day's great at your Juness.
Butts then goes to bed and has a weird dream. The calendar ticks over to the next day. Butts gets up and goes to school. Some kid crashes and hurts his nuts. Butts decides to walk away. Butts is introduced to his class by his teacher. The teacher says Butts is a loser. Butts can call the teacher out and gain some courage. Courage is one of the social stats in the game. There are 5 in total. You can gain points in them by making certain dialogue choices or performing certain tasks. You'll need to raise your social stats to make some dialogue choices. You also need to meet social stat requirements to advance some social links. More on that later. Butts then takes a seat next to not the background characters. Later on in the day, all the students must go home since there's been an incident. We get introduced to Chie and Yukiko. Nutsboy has broken Chie's DVD and gets hit in an ad again. The three head off and talk about stuff. They spot some gossiping housewives trying to gander at the incident. Something about a body hanging from an antenna. Dojima asks why you're there and to go home. Butts does that, eventually. On the news, the body has been identified as the woman the councilman was having an affair with. The news does confirm she was hanging from an antenna. The next day, Bald Boy gets stuck in the bin on his way to school. This time you actually decide to help him. He introduces himself as Yosuke. Butts gets a knowledge point social stat by listening at school. But she and Yosuke go to Juness to get some grub. Yosuke's dad is the manager at this Juness. Yosuke also works here. We introduce to Saki, who also goes to our school and works at Juness. Her family also runs a liquor store in town. They also talk about a rumour on the Midnight Channel. Apparently an image of a person will appear at midnight on a rainy day. On the news they're interviewing a student who found the body. Who seems like you've seen them somewhere before. It's raining, so Butts is going to try the Midnight Channel rumour. We get an anime cutscene so we know something's going to happen. but then puts his hand through the TV and almost gets stuck in the TV. The next day, everyone at school knows it's Saki who found that body. The gang say they saw Saki on the TV, but then almost talks about how he went into the TV. They assume it was a dream, but they go look at TVs anyway. Butts then puts his hand through a big TV at Junes, and the gang fall into the TV. After falling through the TV, they find themselves in a foggy studio. They decide to go exploring. Find a weird room with some questionable decor. Yosuke needs to pee, so he pees in the weird room. Then they go back to the studio and meet a bear. Bear says someone has been throwing people into the TV. The bear then makes an exit and pushes them out. The gang think that was weird, and then they all head home. We wake up the next day and find another body hanging from a pole. An assembly is held at school. Turns out Saki is the one who kicked the bucket. Since it's similar to the last body found, people in town are starting to think it might be a serial killer. The gang suspects it might be related to that TV world, so they pop in for an investigation. While Yosuke and Butts jump, Chie is left holding the rope. Well, what's left of it. In the TV world, they meet a mysterious bear again. They think someone is throwing people in the TV. When it's foggy in the real world, the shadows in the TV world get aggressive, so it could be the cause of the bodies. We find out our mysterious bear is called Teddy. The gang decide to investigate. Teddy also gives them glasses to see in the fog. They go to where the last person to enter the TV was, because Teddy can smell where they were. They end up finding a parallel version of Saki's family's liquor store. You see, this place becomes reality of people who enter it. Oh look, some shadows, and they want to fight.
I am thou. Thou art I. The time has come. Open thine eyes and call forth what is within.
So...
Butts awakens his persona's power, and thus we get our first proper battle, which is a tutorial battle.
Amazing, Sensei!
After that's done, we enter the store. We hear voices of people badmouthing Saki. This warps to Saki, then badmouthing Yosuke. The shadow version of Yosuke appears, embodying the parts of himself he pushes deep down. He rejects that part of himself. The shadow Yosuke turns into the first boss fight of the game.
Not you anymore, see? I am a shadow, the true sin. I'll crush everything, starting with out of the way.
So after we eventually deal with that, Yosuke accepts that aspect of himself. He now gets a persona too. Back in the studio portion of the TV world, they make a promise to come back and try and find out who's been throwing people into the TV. Chi is upset and happy to see them back. On the way back home, Butts has a conversation with Yukiko. Butts then goes home and watches the news to find Yukiko is on the news herself. Later that night, Butts sees someone appear on the Midnight Channel. We goes to Igor in the Velvet Room. He tells us to strengthen our bonds through social links. These social links will in turn strengthen our personas. The next day we talk to Yosuke about what we saw on the Midnight Channel last night. They come to the conclusion that they're the only ones with the power to solve this mystery. But senses a faint stirring of friendship with Yosuke. This gives us the social link of the Magician Arcana.
The persona. As you form bonds by becoming involved with others, your own social links will gradually. The power of these social links is what will determine your
This is as good a time as any to go through social links and Arcana. There are 21 social links altogether, with each social link being linked to that of an Arcana based from tarot cards. Yosuke's Arcana being the Magician, of course. The personas you can use and collect will fit into these different Arcana, so strengthening these social links allows you to strengthen and use new personas in its corresponding Arcana. So each social link is ranked 1 to 10, with most ranked up by spending time with a person it's linked to. Also, ranking up social links related to party members will give them benefits in battle. So, back to the plot. Later that day, Chi believes it was Yukiko on the Midnight Channel last night. But Chi phones Yukiko's family in, and she's still working there, so she's not currently in the TV. They even talk to Teddy through the TV to confirm as much. Meanwhile, the Fuzz have no idea what's going on. Later that night, we see Yukiko is certainly on the Midnight Channel. Yukiko is a princess in a castle, looking for a hot stud / Prince Charming. Yosuke gives us a phone call saying, "We'll have to do something about this in the morning." Butts and Yosuke meet at Junes. Yosuke starts swinging weapons around the food court for some reason. The police get involved, Uncle Dojima bails Butts out. We also meet Dojima's partner, Dachi, who affirms that Yukiko is currently missing. Since our old weapons are confiscated, she takes us to a place to get more weapons. We enter the Velvet Room and meet its newest member, Marie. After that we head into the TV. We talk to Teddy, who points us in the right direction, where we find the castle. She runs into the castle by herself, so Butts enters the castle, which is the first dungeon in the game. Dungeons have multiple floors. Most floors are randomly generated. When walking around the dungeon you can find treasure chests and shadows. Hit a shadow before it hits you, so it doesn't attack first. When you defeat an enemy, you might get something called shuffle time. This will give you multiple cards to choose from. This is how you acquire new personas. They can also do things like restore HP SP, boost your money experience. You can also boost one of your persona stats. You can also break the game if you keep using one persona and just keep upgrading its stats. Also, some shuffle cards will let you pick more cards if you give up something. If you pick all the cards you get a full sweep, which means next shuffle time you get more cards you can pick by default. So after Butts reaches the next floor we find Chie. Then we also find Shadow Chie, who brings up Chie's jealous feelings towards Yukiko. Chie rejects those feelings, so we get a boss fight. After some back and forth we defeat the boss, and Chie accepts that part of herself. So she gets a persona. Chie is tired, so we head off. The gang tell Chie we have time to save Yukiko, because she'll be safe until the next foggy day, which won't happen until several days of rain. So we better check those TV weather reports. Before we leave the TV land, we get the Arcana for the gang, or as the game officially calls it, the investigation team, which is the full Arcana. Well, that bodes well. That evening, Dojima is asking questions about the weapon incident. This upsets Nanako. For some reason, our teacher makes us collect our uniform at night. Next day, we start Chie's social link, the Chariot Arcana. We try to straight up ask Chie for our contact information, but Butts does not have the courage, so we say it's for the investigation. So after that, the game is finally open. We can now choose how to spend our time. You see, every day the story does not get in the way. You can choose how to spend your day, whether that being hanging out with friends, doing activities to increase your social stats, or doing some dungeon crawling. You can also do some things at night, but you don't get much choice in what to do. Also, if you go into a dungeon, you'll be too tired to do anything that night. It only took 2 hours and 51 minutes to get to this, which is probably going to be the first big hurdle for playing the game. The game has a slow start. It took me almost 3 hours to get to the core of the game, and I've played this game before, so a new person might take even longer to get to that point. This might be a huge issue for some players. I know why the game does it, there's a lot of game mechanics, characters and plot to set up, so if you don't gel the story and characters by this point in the game, you're probably checked out. Well, back to the game. Well, I guess Butts has got to decide what he's going to do with his time, but before we decide, it's off to the Velvet Room. This is where we get into the main gameplay element of the Velvet Room. In the Velvet Room, you can fuse personas together to make new, stronger personas. So you collect your personas in the dungeon and fuse them in the Velvet Room. Now it's time to enter the TV and save Yukiko. Also, we're going to do it in one day. Why, you ask? Well, you can do it across multiple days, but the less days you complete the dungeon in, the more days of free time you have. But the biggest problem in doing that is your SP. Your SP is basically your stamina. Most of your persona abilities use SP, and early in the game you don't have many items that can recover SP. This likely means the first time through the game, you're most likely not going to be at the castle in one day. But how did Butts do? Well, keep watching to find out. So Butts and the investigation team hit the castle.
It's a war out there every day. You can't hide from me. You gotta pray for the rules, but you cool. Gotta laugh in the face of this street. When your friends and boss look alike on the face of it, they miss the history, but they fight all the place in it. Yeah, they fight all the place in it. How did other times they just hug and love goes by? I know it's not your fault to say, but there ain't no other way. So step on up to the place. Need to face what can spread on into the light of
The ascent up the castle goes very well. By picking up some SP items on my journey, and careful use of SP skills, as well as good use of physical attacks, Butts makes it to the 8th floor of the castle. But first, using an item, Butts exits the dungeon to do some fusing. I go back to the first floor and do some off-screen grinding, because I'm not going to come back on a different day to grind. But I'm not grinding for experience points. I'm grinding for attribute cards, so I can make Izanagi overpowered. You see, the game expects you to fuse and swap out personas, so when you keep mainly using one persona and keep giving it attribute cards, you can kind of break the game early, especially if you put points to endurance. That makes you really hard to kill. The other thing I was grinding for is items. You see, each floor is randomly generated. When you enter or re-enter a floor, new items appear, so you can keep doing that as much as you want to. The reason I grind the first floor is that I can use my basic attack to heal enemies, and don't have to use any SP. So I was doing this for a while. Now after all that, we go back to the 8th floor to find Yukiko. What do you know, she rejects her shadow part of herself, so it's time for a boss fight.
That's how isn't. No, you're not me. This feels wonderful. It's built.
Yukiko!
We have to stop it. That girl's... We know...
It's all right, Yukiko. Just hang in there.
Persona!
That ruled!
Chie-chan's in danger! Heal her! Chie-chan's really hurting! Heal her! Yosuke's scared! Throw down!
I let my guard down. Come on! Take it!
After that's dealt with, Yukiko learns to accept herself and gets a persona, and we exit to the real world. That night, Cop Dad and friends swing by to say Yukiko has been found. The next day, Margaret phones us to tell us that social links are important. On the way to school, two guys say sports club starts today. It seems Yukiko will take time to recover, so it would seem we've got nothing but free time for a while. I pick up some side quests, most of them are just fetch quests, so I won't be going into them in any detail here. I talk to homeroom teacher about joining clubs. I go to the Velvet Room and listen to Marie's request. She wants to go somewhere outside the Velvet Room, so we get a steak skewer, then Yosuke also shows up. Then Butts and Marie head up to a hill overlooking the town. Butts promises to show Marie more places. Plus we start Marie's social link, the Eon Arcana. Marie's social link is one of the things added to the golden version of the game. That was not in the original release. Also, make sure you finish Marie's social link as soon as possible, so you're not locked out of more new content. That night, Butts spends time at the Chinese diner, which is currently serving food that raises courage. Next day, Butts continues Marie's social link, and Chie shows up this time. Butts eats at the diner again. This time they're serving food that raises diligence. So Butts gets to join a sports team. It's a choice between basketball and soccer. Butts takes the tour first. Butts joins the basketball team. Butts declares himself captain and watches them play basketball. He talks to some of his fellow athletes and starts the Strength Arcana. Whichever sports club you join, it's always the Strength Arcana. Butts goes home and reads a book, Expert Study Methods. When Butts has finished reading the book, he will improve his studying, which means he'll get more knowledge when studying and finishing the book. The next day we spend with Yosuke to rank up his social link, and he gets a new persona ability from it. From now on, I'm only going to talk about it when Butts does something new. If I don't mention it, assume it's something Butts has already done before. The next day, Butts applies for some part-time jobs. Part-time jobs give you some money and, more importantly, helps up various social skills depending on the job. On the 24th of April at night, we hang out with Chie. But when you hang out with someone on the streets of Inaba at night, it does not advance the social links. It's just more bonus interactions that give you extra points towards that social link. On the 26th of April, we hang out with Chie, who wants to train with Butts. On the 27th, when it's raining, we study at the library. This gives us 3 knowledge points, 1 extra for it raining, and 1 extra for finishing expert study methods. The next day, Butts asks his teacher about joining a culture club. Butts chooses drama over band. That gives us the Sun Arcana. On the 29th of April, that would have been the deadline for rescuing Yukiko. We check the Midnight Channel at night to find that everything is okay. The next day, Yukiko is back at school. Later that day, the investigation team hang out on the roof at school. Yukiko officially joins the team and is now a party member. The group will keep looking for the culprit, and with that, it's rank 2 of the Fool's Arcana. They meet Teddy so Yukiko can see the TV world again. Hijinks ensue. That evening, Dojima says we should go for a trip. Nanako is excited. Well, that was the first dungeon. The next 2 are going to be a bit quicker recaps, since for one, there was lots of setup in the first dungeon. I won't have to go over as many mechanics, and I won't be talking about activities and social links I already talked about. Let's get to it. On the second night it was raining, so I decided to do some more grinding. After finishing a dungeon, you can redo a dungeon and fight an optional boss, which I did off screen. Later that night, Jimat tells Nanako that he can't go on the trip because of work and stuff. This makes Nanako upset, but after that, Butts ate something he found in the fridge that gave him courage. The next day is some kind of holiday, so no school. She asks Butts if he wants to hang out with the investigation team, and asks Nanako if she wants to come along, which she does. The team hang out and have some light banter.
I don't have him.
We start Nanako's social link, the Justice Arcana. The 5th of May we meet a fox, and this starts the Hermit Arcana, which works a bit differently than a normal social link, as the fox will give you side quests to complete to advance the social link. That night, Dojima comes back home and gives Nanako a shirt, and Butts some swimming trunks. The next day we hang out with Dojima and start the Hierophant social link. The next day the team is scared by lightning. From the 9th to the 12th there's midterms. Hope Butts has been studying and paid attention in class, or just looked up the answers online. On the 13th of May, we find some punk kid on the TV. Dojima recognises him as Kanji. The next day it's running and Butts checks the midnight channel. We see someone on the TV. I wonder who it could be. The next day the team talk about what they saw on the TV. Kanji shows up on the TV again that night. The team investigate Kanji's mother's textile shop, where they find a slender young man talking to Kanji's mother. The team then eavesdrop Kanji's conversation with the slender young man. Apparently they're meeting at the school tomorrow and he seems flustered. Kanji then chases the team off. The next day the team continue their investigation. Butts and Yukiko do some light stalking. They talk for a bit and we have started Yukiko's social link, the Priestess Arcana. Butts has enough courage to straight up ask Yukiko for her number. Meanwhile Kanji chases Chie and Yosuke around town. Kanji then chases everyone. That night on the Midnight Channel, let's say we get an interesting appearance from Kanji. The next day the gang talk about the events. The team vow to find Kanji. We also rank up the full Arcana. Teddy can't find Kanji in the TV world, and so we have to go back to the real world to find more information about Kanji. Now we get to the part of the game I don't like, where we have to talk to the right people in the right order to find the information to find Kanji. This bit can be a bit tedious. I'd recommend a guide to make this part go faster. Well, eventually we talk to the right people in the right order. To know we have to talk to the slender young man tomorrow. The next day, Butts does just that. Now we can go into the TV world to find Kanji. Also the fox is there now. With that we start the second dungeon, the bathhouse. I would say now's as good a time as any to say. Persona has a bad habit of representing LGBTQ+ topics less than gracefully. Sometimes to the point where it could be considered offensive to people in that community. As you saw earlier, Kanji's shadow displayed a lot of what could be considered negative stereotypical aspects of a gay man. You could say that it's because Kanji's shadow is playing to those more stereotypical aspects as a result of him not accepting that part of himself, but still be aware, generally speaking, Persona has a bad track record when it comes to this sort of thing. It's just something to consider before playing the game, if that affects you. So on with the dungeon and the grind. Eventually we make it to Kanji and he rejects his shadow, so we get a boss fight.
Not yet.
Kanji-kun!
Don't give up, Yosuke! Closed. Give me more. Throw down! Persona! It's so big!
Butts and the team fairly easily vanquish the boss. Kanji accepts himself and gets a persona. We leave the TV world. At night, Dojima says Kanji has been found and ponders about your connection to him. It will be a while before Kanji recovers. The next day, Butts starts a daycare job. On the 22nd of May, Butts and Nanako do some farming. We can grow vegetables that give us items to use. Butts spends some time doing various social links. On the 27th of May, we hang out with Adachi and start the Jester Arcana. We do some more of the same. On the 4th of June, we go into the Velvet Room and form a bond with Margaret to start the Empress Arcana. To advance her social link, we have to show her certain personas with specific skills she requests. That evening we check the Midnight Channel and nothing, but someone is lurking in the fog. On the 6th, Kanji has recovered and joins the investigation team and dusts the party. The full Arcana ranks up. Kanji gets to go back to the TV world and talk with Teddy. Next day at school, they chat about the upcoming school trip. But has to help at school for Health Week or something. But isn't very helpful and meets Saki's brother. On the 11th of June, we clear up some misunderstandings with Kanji and start his social link, the Emperor Arcana. On the 13th of June, the boys hang out with scooters. Yeah, I forgot to mention Butts and Yosuke got their scooter license, so that was a thing. But now the boys are hanging out with scooters and Kanji follows riding his bike. Some shenanigans happen. On the 17th, Butts and Pals head off to the school trip. The girls make some unedible food. Kanji joins the boys' tents. The lads get a little closer. Kanji then goes running off. Now the girls want to get into the boys' tent, which I'm sure will make for an awkward evening. The next day, everyone goes to the old swimming hole. On the 19th of June, we see an idol called Risei. Is stepping down and that she's coming to town. The next day, investigation team suspects Risei could be a potential next victim since she appeared on the TV. On the 21st, Butts turns on the Midnight Channel and we'll look at Risei on the Midnight Channel. The next day, we see the team have to investigate, but it could prove difficult since Risei is attracting quite a bit of attention since she used to be an idol and all. Dejima is suspicious of your interests. The team talk to Risei at her family's tofu store. That evening the family hang out and Dejima is asking more questions. The team decide to stake out the tofu shop to see if anyone will try to get to Risei. The team spot a suspicious looking otaku trying to take pictures of Risei. The gang think they have captured the suspect, but it seems Risei is missing. Well, looked like that was not the culprit. That night, Risei is on the Midnight Channel. The next day, they check the TV world to find Risei. In the TV world, Teddy is having an existential crisis. We cheer him up and start the social link of the Star Arcana. Now we get to the point where we have to talk to people in a certain order. So after all that, we can enter the third dungeon, the Striptease. Well, it's time to go through the floors again. So eventually, Butt and his team makes it to the 11th floor, where Risei is, and that's as far as we're going to go with this overview. Well, that was a somewhat loose overview of the first 3 dungeons of Persona 4 Golden. I hope that gives you a sample, a little taste if you will, of what the game has to offer. If you watched the video this far, thank you. This is most likely going to be the longest video from just looking at the script alone. It's also a bit of a different video format than I normally do. The main thing I want to get across from doing this format was how Persona's different gameplay systems interlink and synergize with each other, since that's the franchise's biggest strength. How the game's dungeon RPG combat allows you to proceed with the story and visual novel elements. In turn, those elements make you stronger in combat. Persona has no one element of its gameplay or story that makes it stand above the rest, but it's how it all connects together that gives the game its strength. But I should also mention the game's aesthetics, since I haven't really touched on it. Well, graphically it's a PS2 game, so don't expect much in that regard. The game does have good art direction with its TV motifs, it just does not stand out as much as their later games. But like all Persona games, it has a great soundtrack. Hopefully I'm able to have some of these tracks playing throughout the video. So, should you play Persona 4 Golden? Well, yes, if you're interested in elements I've described, then go for it. If you're not interested, I doubt you made it this far into the video, but if you did, good for you. Some other notes, Persona 4 has a lot of spin-off material. 2 different anime, 2 fighting games, that you should not play or even look at, since it takes place after the main game. A dancing game, and a stage show. I would definitely say play and finish the game before looking at any of those. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, thanks for watching. That was my first look at Mega 10 and Persona on the channel. I would like to look at more in the future at some point, so let me know if you want me to look at other games in the franchise, maybe, you know, Persona 5 or maybe 3 or one of the other many games in the Shin Megami Tensei the Shin Megami Tensei franchise. well, that video is now over. So, cool. No. Yeah, but no. Okay. Well, I don't know what to say here, so... Video is now over. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment. Oh, that's everything. Yeah. I'm gonna go now. Not physically, I'm just gonna turn off the camera. See ya.